Okay, hello everybody. Today I want to talk about attachments because I know a couple of different religions, Hinduism and Buddhism, talk about attachment or non-attachment. And maybe the people I work with and myself have a different idea of what that means. So I wanted to talk about it so that we can understand when we're attached to things, and then we can understand when we're not attached to them and how to unattach to those things. So there was a couple of quotes I wanted to say first. So apparently the Buddha said the root of suffering is attachment. So I agree with that. I can agree with that. But you've got to understand what attachment is in order to let go of that, let go of the suffering, and be in peace. Also, in I think it's Hinduism, it says a state in which, so non attachment is a state in which a person overcomes their emotional attachment to things, people, worldly concerns, and thus attains a heightened perspective. So let's talk about how attachments begin. And they begin right at the beginning of life. So before we look at humans, let's imagine we've got a new puppy and we want it to learn its name. So we call it its name over and over and over again until it becomes attached to its name, until it knows that name is attached to the puppy. And so when we call it by its name, it comes. It knows it's got that attachment inside of itself. We do that with children as well, right? We give them a name, we use that name over and over and over again until they understand that that name means them. It's an attachment to that child. We also have something called attachment parenting. And what is that? It's where we hold the child, we carry the child around with us many hours of the day. Maybe we sleep with the child as well, so we're actually forming a bond between ourselves and that child. We're creating an attachment. There's also attachments to things. Think about if you've got maybe an old piece of furniture that used to belong to a grandparent of yours, or a house or a cabin that belonged to an old relative of yours. There is then an attachment to that thing. You don't want to let it go because there's that memory, there's that bond between you and that thing. That's where suffering comes in, because it's really just a thing. I think we talked recently in the last few weeks, I talked about a rose that was in my kitchen, and it's just a rose. There are memories of how that rose came about that are in my mind, but I can let go of those and just see it as a rose, right? And then there's no attachment left to it, and I'm not suffering because of it. Another thing, triggers, right? If we are triggered by something, it's because there's an attachment inside of us that is that's actually physically inside of us. It's an energetic attachment stored in our, I believe, our connective tissue. And when someone triggers us, words will often trigger people. The word war is a trigger for many people. So if you hear the word war, if it triggers you, there's an emotional, energetic attachment inside of you to that word through stories you've heard about war, through movies you've watched about war, through things you've read or heard from other people. Those attachments inside of us. And that's where suffering comes. Because if you just see the word war as the word, right, 3 letters, WAR, it's just a word, then there's no suffering. But if you put that attachment to it, you attach those memories, those stories to it, then there's suffering when you hear the word war. Think about things for yourself. Think about what your attachments are. Obviously, to family, we all have attachments to family. Some of them might be negative, but a lot of them will be positive, right? We don't want to lose track of our family members. To me, those are my biggest attachments. And they cause me the most suffering because my mind goes around and around things that might happen, things that are happening. So letting go of those is going to bring about peace. So how do we let go of attachments? First of all, we have to notice them. That is the biggest key, is actually noticing the attachments, noticing when we're triggered, noticing when we're emotional, noticing when we're holding onto something from the past, then we can work with it. Once we've noticed it, we can work with it. Different ways we can do that. The ways I talk about EFT tapping, if we talk about our attachments as we're tapping, it releases the energy stuck in the nervous system around that attachment. So we can work on memories that way. We can work on words that way. We can work on family members. We can work on things and release the energy so that we're no longer attached to it. If we have a deeper level of awareness, we can actually feel the physical sensations that come up, because once we're aware at that deeper level, there is actually an energetic pull. You can actually feel that pull inside, that attachment inside, when you think about something that you're attached to. So a trigger, let's go back to that trigger word war. If you hear that word war, if you can feel inside of yourself what that brings up, I can feel something in my abdomen, in my solar plexus area, kind of deeper inside than the solar plexus when I hear the word war. So that's my attachment, and I can just focus on it, focus on those physical sensations, allow them to be, not try and change them in any way, just feel them, and they will release. It takes some work, it takes some focus to do that, but that is releasing the energetic charge in that connective tissue, in that attachment inside, allowing me to come to peace around that word war. So we can all do that for whatever the attachments are. I want to go back to that phrase I said at the beginning about the state in which a person overcomes their emotional attachment for things, people, worldly concerns, and thus attains a heightened perspective. I love those last two words, a heightened perspective, because if you've heard my last talks and just heard me talk about things in the past, so heightened, as you release this tension, these attachments, this burden that we've been carrying, it actually releases us physically, releases our neck, it releases the tension in our body, and actually allows us to be heightened, to grow, right? I've grown 3/4 of an inch, not because I've actually grown, but because I've let go of what's been holding me down, what's been pushing me down. So we can all do that, I believe. And so there is a heightened perspective. But if you've also heard me talk about perspective, as we release that tension, we can actually move ourselves in ways that we couldn't move ourselves in the past, so that we actually have a different physical perspective. Like we can see from different points of view as we move our head and our neck around. And because we can see from physically different points of view, we can actually see from different mental points of view as well. So we have a heightened perspective, right? We are taller and we can see from different perspectives. So I love that phraseology of how that comes into the story of attachments. So that is what I wanted to talk about today. My friend Cloudia is here. Maybe Cloudia, do you have anything to add to that talk about attachments? Anything that you are aware you've been attached to recently?
Yes, I am aware of attachments. I don't always know how to become heightened with them, but I know that some attachments do make you higher and some make you have to work on the other ones that don't. And that's the hard part for me, is working on the attachments that I would like to get deeper into and release them, so I have a higher perspective of
So
them.
those are the really strong attachments. I mean, there are some attachments that are very, very strong. They've been ingrained in us over and over and over again, and they take more work.
I understand that, and I have found where some memories are coming back, and I think it's through tapping. And even if I'm not tapping, all of a sudden I'll just think of something, and it will take me all the way back, and then I can tap on that and see where it goes or where it comes from.
So that's the subconscious mind. That's your subconscious mind opening up because you've let go of some of the outer layers, and the innermost memories are starting to bubble up.
Yes, And it feels good. Not always, but most of the time it feels good to see where they come from and that they're just some things that we've been programmed with.
Right. So, yes. So, your awareness is expanding. You're becoming aware. Yeah, it doesn't always feel good when those negative memories come up, but they're coming up to be looked at. So, if you can mentally realize that that is the case, that it's coming up to be looked at, and then, yeah, you have to go into it. But if you realize it's all for your benefit in the end, it can help.
I totally agree with that. And in the tappings that I've done with you, I have grown so much and learned so much about who I really am. I thank you for that.
You're welcome. Good. Oh, it's fun to see your awareness expanding for sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
I would really like to talk more about your phrases. I like the first one. Can you read that one again?
The one Buddha said, the root of suffering is attachment.
Yeah, I can relate to that because we hold on and it's suppressed. And until we become aware of that, it holds us down.
The last couple of days really been thinking about it. They're just words, right? We hear these words on the radio, the TV, all around us. They're just words, but we attach a meaning to all these words, and then we have those emotional attachments to those meanings. And if we can let go of that and realize they're just words, then the suffering disappears. It's just hard to do because we are so programmed to feel those emotional attachments. So our work is to let go of those attachments, and then suffering disappears, and then we're at peace all the time. It's just easier said than done.
Yes, way easier said than done. I was even noticing, even, music and the words and how we couldn't say a lot of things before, but the generation has grown and grown. But even sometimes you'll listen to music, something so simple as music, and the beat is really good, but then you start listening to the words and you go, what the heck? That
Which is, that's the attachment. That's the
attachment.
attachment to the words.
Exactly. And then I probably don't lose the attachment to the word during the song, but I can sort of not hear what they're saying just so I can hear the beat because the beat makes me feel good, but the
Yes.
words are wrong. So
Right. So in some ways, that is actually suppressing, right? If we're
that,
trying not to hear,
yeah.
yeah. Well,
So
as you
I
can
just,
see, the newer generations, the younger generations, they don't care, right? They've let go of some of those attachments, and it might just be the age, right? When we're young, we're not as attached to the words. We seem to gain attachment over the years because we replay those. We keep going down the same neural pathways, and we deepen the ruts that those words have inside of us. So it might just be that they're young and they're not yet, attuned to that as much. But if we can actually feel those words rather than try not to hear them, right, there's a very subtle difference there, and that's what I've been trying to work out, why I've been able to go so deep. And I know, I don't know anyone else who has. They may well be, but I don't know anyone else who has. And I'm trying to work out what it is I've done that's different than a lot of the other teachers talk about. And it's that subtle difference right there. It's like, you don't want to suppress it. You also don't want to express it. So there's those two extremes. It's right in the middle. It's actually noticing the words and feeling them or tapping with them to let them go so that you can actually hear the words and not have them create an energetic charge inside of you, right? Just have them, have you be at peace with the words and the music, and then you get the full experience.
good explanation, Anne.
Good.
And talking about music, I think more a lot of people will relate to. They like a song, but the words are so there, and that they are suppressing those words as simple as a song.
Yeah, so that's a practice that someone could do. If you wanted to listen to the music and you wanted to do this inner work, you could tap along to the words, right? Not
Great
just
idea.
yeah, you could actually do the EFT tapping as you're listening to the words. Actually sing the words, because if they have an energetic charge in you, if they're words that you do not want to say, that means there's resistance inside of you to those words. And if you tap along and actually say the words, then you're working on releasing the resistance to them. And that is ending suffering inside of you. So that in itself is something that people could do.
I love that idea. I love it. And you can even get the words on your phone. You can make it and you could just sit there and tap. That is a good way to maybe for a lot of people to start.
Yeah, it could be if you don't want to go any deeper. Yes.
No, I want to go deeper, but I mean to start. That would be a good practice. I want to try that today.
Okay. Okay. Gets to be fun as well if you like the beats for sure. I don't recommend people listen to music that does not feel good, because I do think some of the modern music does have a detrimental effect in the body, somewhat akin to the way words change water.
Yeah,
Right, negative words, negative music actually destroy the structure of water. I do feel that somewhat happens in the body too with music that really does not feel good to you, so I don't recommend that necessarily, but certainly with the words, if it's music that feels good.
I agree.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are not aware that some music is detrimental. I remember going into a store one time and the music they were playing just felt like it was tearing me apart on the inside. I actually was going to ask them if they would stop the song, or I was going to walk out of the store when the music actually finished. But when you become more aware, when you've let go of more and more resistance, you become more aware inside. You can become more aware of what does not feel good, and then you can avoid that kind of thing more.
I agree.
Okay, good. Okay, well, I think that's all for today. Hopefully you got something from it, and please feel free to join us next week or any other week. I'd love this to be a discussion with people, including Cloudia, but anyone else is welcome too. So thank you, and I'll see you next week. Bye bye.
Hi, Ann. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye bye.